Oh, camera is over here. There we go. Hi, my name is Heather. Welcome to day 9 of 180 days of Lang, where I talk about what I do every day in my AP Language and Composition class. So in this lesson, I'm actually introducing the first half of types of evidence. We're going to talk about quantifiable evidence, which is basically like things you can count. And this is also a good day just for scheduling where I introduce a powerhouse assignment of rhetorical analysis called a rhetorical Precis. So it is something my students do all through the first semester. Once I introduce it, they do one a week, every week until the semester exam. Then we do something else in the spring. But this is a 4-sentence analysis of a current event. So it serves so many purposes. One, it gets them reading the news. They need to have some world context to be able to argue, to understand what they're reading, to be informed adolescents and later adults. So it gets them to read the news. And then it is just this compact little structure that gets them to do all the rhetorical situation analysis, speaker, purpose, audience, context, and exigence, and then to start thinking about rhetorical choices and the variety of them that we see in different types of writing. And they're also super easy to grade because they're so formulaic. That's intentional. And then what happens when you move into rhetorical analysis essays is you'll see that the first 2 sentences of this, basically, if they can do this on a text cold every week, they can do this on any rhetorical analysis prompt that you give to them and essentially write their thesis statement or their introduction to the essay. So let's break it down. Here's what it is. I ask students to go to one approved news source every week and pick an article. So ideally something that's been published within that week. They may have to stretch back a little bit to find something that interests them, something that catches their eye. And I don't tell them it can or can't be on certain topics or anything like that. It just needs to be something written. I have a short list here of sources that I ask my students to stick to. I know that issues of access and things like that are big questions. If you have nothing else, you have access to NPR. And I love NPR for many reasons, but mostly because their articles are numerous and varied in their content and their style. And there's often really engaging audio stories because it's national public radio, right? So oftentimes I will hear them listening to those too while they're reading the article, which is also fun. And yeah, so you may have to have conversations with your department, depending on your teaching climate or what you can get access to. And I know some news publications, if you have a student email account, then you can get a free 10 articles a month or something that'll work for this assignment. So get what you can find and get them access to, but NPR will always work in a pinch. And most of my kids ended up picking something from them anyway because they were more relatable and accessible. So the format of a rhetorical précis is really only 4 sentences. And the first sentence is like super formulaic. It should be the author, the genre and title of the work, the date, in parentheses, a rhetorically accurate verb such as asserts, argues, suggests, implies, claims, and a that clause containing the major assertion. So I have an example of this. Here's what a sentence 1 might sound like. In her New York Times article, A Forgotten Step in Saving African Wildlife, Protecting the Rangers, from November 28th, 2016, Rachel Newer claims that many park personnel are going without necessities, such as health insurance, and necessary measures aren't being taken to help solve this issue. So I'm not the phrasing overall of this. I know that's a little wordy. That's a real student example, but that, all of those things, if a student can read and get all of that in the first sentence, there's a rhetorical situation. Then the second sentence they're writing is an explanation of how the author develops or supports the thesis, usually in chronological order. So if they're reading a super long article, these might be long sentences with multiple clauses. But here's an example from an average news story. She greatly supports this claim by offering the reader statistical evidence and by explaining numerous touching stories to impact the audience emotionally, intending to gain some sort of sympathy. So that's 2 rhetorical choices there too. And again, we're not super worried about phrasing here, but this student has shown that she can not only understand the choices, but why an author might make those choices to connect with her audience. So think about the power of those 2 sentences alone for rhetorical analysis essays. If they can do those, they can do anything rhetorical analysis related. Then the third sentence is a restatement of the author's apparent purpose, followed by an order to phrase. So this one, Nua wrote this article intending for there to be a change in what these park personnel, the people who fend off poachers, receive in terms of healthcare and basic life necessities. Purpose being so important to a new rhetorical situation, new rhetorical analysis piece that it's worth getting its own sentence. And then the final sentence, I let them have a choice. They can analyze the audience if it seems to be something like really specific they're trying to speak to, or if they want, they can just say why they picked that particular article, because some kids would rather just do that, and it's interesting to see what they're interested in. So the student wrote, I chose this article because I'm interested in what people are doing in order to better ensure better care for all people worldwide. All right, so this assignment, I'm really picky about these. They have to be typed. They have a link to the article at the top. They have to have those 4 sentences in that exact format, and it's due once a week. So what I will often do, the first ones that come in are not super great for a lot of kids. So what I do is I look very carefully for some strong examples, even if it's one really good sentence from an example where there's some messy other sentences, and I pull those out on the board the day after these are due, and we talk about how to do them. And I oftentimes give kids a mulligan on the first one and let them make corrections so they can get the format down. But after that, no mercy. We do these every week. I have mine due on Thursday, and so every Thursday it's just a Google Classroom Dropbox. They have a rhetorical précis due. And yeah, so this is a powerful assignment. I've done it for every year that I've taught AP Lang, and it's been just a great skill builder for getting kids to prepare for rhetorical analysis essays and read the news.